Now in part 2, we are going to go more in depth into a door leaf detail. So previously we learned about the different types of doors, right? So door leaf detail, we'll touch on flush door, louvered door, side hung door, and sliding door. We have learned a little bit about flush door just now. So if you go more in depth, right here, the door details, there are things like your door jambs, how you want the door to look on the surface, etc. In flush door, previously we know that there is a hollow core door and a solid door, right? So in hollow core, in this slide, I'm going to show you more details on the section profile. So again, don't be afraid of detailed drawings. This looks familiar, right? The horizontal bar is the rail, and then vertical is the style. So now if we take a section cut, we go to this drawing, what I need you to take note is in this flush door, usually at the edge here, we have this thing called lipping or an edging. Okay, as the name suggests, is always at the edge here. So what this lipping does is that it will form a continuous finish to the ends of the door. Okay, so take note of this hardwood lipping or edging is to give a neat finish. Imagine if you don't have this, what happened is this is a plywood door, right? You're just going to have a gap. So we will always finish with a lipping all around. And this brown portion is our so-called hollow core door. Of course, we have all these middle rails in the center. That is why you see these middle rails. Okay. And then now if you look back to a sectional plan detail, this is at detail A, meaning this A, they cut it. This is what we see here at the edge. It's a lipping detail. Same for B here. We have a lipping detail. Alright, so this is based on a skeletal core drawing. Now, let's move to the solid core. Again, if you recall, solid core means you have this wood inside the door, in between the door panels, is usually two pieces of 25 mm timber strips glued together. Okay, so let's touch on bit by bit. If you look at the section again, here it says you have a 6 mm thick veneer plywood. The plywood is actually the external finish. Okay, to get the color, usually brown color, right? To get the color that you want, is stained and varnished. So you have a protective layer. And then inside you have the solid core infill. So again, this is a section. We now have a sectional plan detail. You see the core, solid core here, and the outside you have the plywood finish. Okay. Okay, all these details I'll touch on a little bit first. This is what we call a door jamb. The door jamb is the part where you connect your door to the wall. And this is the architrave. Later on, I will show you an image of the architrave. Okay, if you move to the elevation of the door, we have a door jamb. Okay, an architrave, and then you have your solid core door inside. Sometimes your solid core door has a glass panel. Okay, sometimes you might have seen this in those HDB staircase core or even in some office rooms. So let's see how you should detail a glass panel within a solid core door. Now, looking at the elevation, so you have a glass panel here, right? If I look at this section BB, I'll zoom to here. It's a sectional plan detail. You will need an 6 mm thick clear glass to infill inside this wooden door. Okay, this is 6 mm thick, this is 38. So you see the difference in the thickness. And if I move to the section, this section is cutting this way down, section CC. Okay, so it cuts through the glass. What you have here is a piece of glass held in between these pieces of wood. Okay, so if you want to remember all these details, what you can do is you can practice drawing the basic stuff like the 2 pieces of 6 mm thick veneer, the solid core, then you have a glass, and you basically repeat the same detail below. Okay, very easy, right? 6 mm, solid core, and glass. Of course, we can't leave the ends untouched, and that is where your lipping comes in. So the lipping is when you want to finish off edges, you call it lipping. So you add one here and add one here. Okay, as I talk, if you can, pause the video and try sketching this detail out. Alright? Now, we are done with the solid, the flush door. Let's move on to the louvered door. Louvered door is very common because usually it's when we want to have ventilation behind the door. We introduce louvers. This is an elevation of a louvered door. It says here 10 mm thick timber blade, spaced and 15 apart, meaning right, all these timber blades are 10 mm width with a spacing of 15 mm. So if I jump here to this DE section, DE means here, DE, this is the 10 mm thickness. Okay, then you have the spacing at 15 mm. Minimum lap of 4 mm, meaning the lapping distance between here to here. Okay, usually it's at 45 degrees because when you try, there are cases where you do 30 degrees, but 45 is more effective if you want to shield off whatever surfaces is inside, because 45 is more tilted, right? So if it's for screening purposes, 45 is effective. At the same time, all these gaps will allow ventilation through. So it's very commonly used when you have services, your risers, and when you need air as well as screening. Okay, now again, try to practice drawing this. When you have all these louvers, of course you need a frame, right? You see this frame here to hold the pieces. So if you translate here, you have a frame, frame, frame. Okay, in between you have the blades. All these are sectional cut lines. Because the door is very high, I can't draw a whole section. So that's when you introduce a section cut line to say that I'm breaking up in parts. Okay, talk to your tutors if you don't understand this section and you want to understand further. Again, you see the lipping happens. Why? Because this is the finished door, right? At the edges, we have the lipping. Okay, now we move to the sectional plan. You have your blade here. Okay, try to take a few minutes to digest how you get a section plan from this elevation and how you get a section detail from this elevation. Okay, now a side hung door. Side hung is, as the name suggests, you hinge it at the side. It's openable, so it's hinged at one side. And then we move to a sliding door. Sliding door is supported on tracks. This one we learned in first part of the lecture, right? So let's look at some track details. How does a track work? If you look at this plan, I can see that it's 2 track. Okay, 2 track meaning, right, 1 track here, second track here. So now I ask you a question. If I open this panel, this 2 panel, I shift it here, right? At any one time, my opening is only 1/3, right? Agree? Because it's only 2 track. So if I want a 50% opening, I will need these 2 panels to move to this side. Agree? So I will need a 3-track system. So as an architect, you can actually decide how many tracks you want. So now we move to the section detail. Don't be scared, feel empowered to know all this. Because this detail is shown here as a RC structure here, we call it a lintel. Okay, RC lintel. Lintel is always the piece where you place it above a door because you need to hold the door. It's just a term, okay? It's like a beam, but we add below the beam, sometimes we will build another piece. It's called a lintel. This lintel will connect to your track details. Okay, and then it comes down to this frame for the sliding door, which is here, and then to the glass frame, glass pieces. Okay, now let's zoom in the details. RC lintel and RC wall will always have to be finished, right? It's something called plastering. Then after which you can paint outside the plastering. Okay, that's why we have 20 mm thick plastering. This plastering, we will always aim to conceal this track here, so we don't see it on the outside. Okay, basically you just need to know all these main things are lintel, plastering, hardwood door frame, and then you need to specify how thick your glass is. Okay, you realize we always specify 6 mm. That is the typical thickness of a single piece of glass. Right? Now, just now we talked on the timber frame, right? Now is aluminum frame. Is basically the same detail except that here is wood, whereas here is aluminum. Okay, you realize aluminum profile is just a thin metal piece, whereas here is a whole chunk of wood. Okay, so when do you use aluminum? When do you use timber? If I go back to this picture, if it's facing the outside, I'll probably want to use aluminum because of weather resistance to the rain. Okay, it's more durable. Again, you specify your glass. Then you have, this is a detail at the bottom here. Okay, at the bottom, because it's between inside to outside, inside and outside, right? We must always introduce a floor drop. Okay, give 1 second to yourself to think why we need a drop. Alright, I'll give you the answer later. So, because this is outside, we need a waterproofing membrane. Alright, all this will take time to be able to draw, but I just want to highlight to you the main specifications in the detail drawing, so you're aware when you see a detail drawing next time. Okay, we have a waterproofing membrane, and then we have the track. Alright, so why is there a drop? Because of rain. Okay, you don't want water to flow in so much, right? So firstly, you do a drop. Secondly, this is always slightly sloped a little bit here so that water doesn't flow in so easily. Okay, now the folding sliding door. This one we learned previously, right? Doors are joined by hinges and supported by tracks so that you can fold it continuously, whereas revolving door is when usually is in those extreme cold countries, you want to have this pressure difference, they do a revolving door. And now we'll move to the last part of the lecture, which is part 3,